Men, are you guys having a hard time in the dating world to the point where maybe it's easier to become a priest than it is to become a husband? Today, I want to talk to you guys about 7 qualities you guys can look for in Catholic women that will separate the great women from the, well, you know. So, if you're interested in finding a Catholic woman who actually acts Catholic, stay tuned for this video. Before we get started though, I'd like to thank our sponsor, House of Joppa. I'll talk a little more about them later on in the video. I would first like to start this video off by saying that nobody is perfect, okay? I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, we all have flaws, we're all sinners, we all live in a fallen world. So just keep that in mind, we're all going to have something that doesn't make us perfect. So don't let that deter you from finding the girl you want to marry one day, and hopefully these qualities that I'm gonna lay out for you will help with you discerning that. The number 1 quality you want this woman to have is to be able to suffer well. The worst kind of women I've ever met are those who complain about everything, are always the victim, nobody likes them, everything's against them, God's against them, the world's against them, always complaining, always negative, no positive outlook on life, always just throwing themselves a pity party, poor me, everything's wrong, blah, 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 blah. That is so exhausting. Even being friends with somebody like that is so exhausting. And there's going to be a lot of suffering in marriage. That's kind of the point. Marriage is beautiful and it's a vocation and it's wonderful in so many ways, but marriage is also a cross. It's something that we need to carry, and it's a way of mortifying ourselves in order to get to heaven, and the whole purpose is to get each other to heaven. So if you have someone who's constantly complaining, etc., that's a lot of mortification for you. I guess you know what I mean, I guess, just is that, like, you don't want a woman who's going to crumble at the smallest sign of inconvenience. And I want to clarify that women are allowed to crumble and have emotions and be emotional and things of that nature, but they also need to be able to function properly and not break down if Trader Joe's doesn't have their favorite tortellini. I had an experience at Trader Joe's yesterday. I don't want to talk about it. But she should have this understanding of suffering, that when we unite suffering with Christ's suffering on Calvary, that it becomes sanctifying and transformative. And suffering, unfortunately, is just a part of life, and we're going to go through it, whether it's your suffering or her suffering or other sufferings that happen throughout life, because that's just kind of a part of life. You guys will face suffering, but you want a woman who understands the purpose of suffering, and even if it is really bad and having human emotions, that's totally normal and everything, she isn't going to let her emotions control her. And I'm going to say this for the men, because I have met some men who think that women should be emotionless robots, and I don't really understand where that idea comes from. Women have a beautiful gift of emotions and feeling deeply and nurturing and being motherly, and that is beautiful. That's not something that should be suppressed. So men, if you think your woman shouldn't be crying about a puppy, or if you think she's overreacting because she's overstimulated, etc., and she feels like she's not supported, actually listen to her, especially if they're reasonable claims, and try to be more supportive and not just like, oh, you're being emotional. I don't think you guys specifically watching this video are like that, but I have met guys like that. I dated 2 of them. So just don't be like that, okay? We're a team, okay? And women are not supposed to be like men, and men are not supposed to be like women. We have our own unique gifts, our own unique basically everything. And if you guys can't tell by my shirt, the future is male and female. We're different. So don't expect a woman to be an emotionless robot as long as her emotions do not control her and they don't get out of control, etc. Like she doesn't abuse someone type of thing, like hitting, verbal abuse, stuff like that. Like if she is just emotional, like that's okay, you know, like that's normal. You just don't want a woman who's constantly throwing herself pity parties but not actually doing anything to help or fix her situation. So does she complain endlessly about every minor inconvenience, or does she view these setbacks as opportunities for growth and deeper reliance on God? Is she upset when other people get an opportunity that she wanted? Does she constantly talk badly about other people, especially other women? Is she always the victim? Is she always pointing out the flaws in others but never looking in the mirror? Look, all I'm saying is that if she's constantly throwing out the victim card, the victim narrative, that is a red flag, and you do not want that quality in a woman. She can absolutely vent and complain about things. I don't think venting or complaining about things is necessarily the problem, as long as it's within reason, of course, and that goes for just anybody, including men. However, there does come a point where the pattern is she is the victim, the world is against her, nothing's good enough, you just do not want a woman like that, okay? That is a headache waiting to happen. Number 2, she actually prays and it shows. Look, any woman can come up to you and say that they're Catholic, but what really matters is their actions, not their words. Does she actually talk to God? Does she actually have a relationship with him, or is her faith more for show or done out of habit, tradition, as opposed to actually living her faith authentically? I think a very common thing that happens these days is that a lot of women will post about their faith online, but not take it very seriously in person in their private life. Everything that they do has to be online. It has to be a show for all their followers. It has to be a show for their family. It has to be a show for their friends. But in reality, they don't take their faith seriously in their personal life. They don't have a prayer life. They don't have a prayer routine. They don't care if they skip mass on Sundays. They don't really go to confession. With the rise of social media, I have seen this becoming more and more of a problem. So that is something we need to look out for. If you like a girl, you can look up her Instagram and it might seem like she is a devout Catholic, but you won't actually know whether or not she is until you see her in action, and you can actually see through her actions if there is grace flowing through her life. Because you want a woman who is going to confession, receiving the sacraments, someone who has a relationship with God and it shows. She knows him deeply, she loves him, she's having that relationship with him. I don't think a woman necessarily has to have the perfect Catholic life. There's no such thing as the perfect Catholic life, but I think striving for that, having a woman who desires that and is striving for that, is also a good thing. She doesn't have to have it all figured out. Don't expect her to have like this entire, routine and everything scheduled out, but if she desires it and she's striving for that, that's also a good sign. Actually, Father Ambrose, who's a friend of mine, he's an exorcist, he's a Norbertine, and he said that one of the best places to look for a future spouse is in the confession line. Obviously, don't ask them out while they're in the confession line, but that's a great way to see who is actually marriage material and who isn't. Now, of course, yes, there are some people who go to confession as a performative act. I don't think that that's as popular as a lot of people make it out to be. I do believe that most people who go to confession do so for the proper purposes. But yes, of course, there is always that thing where it's like, yes, it could be performative, but it's usually 9 out of 10 times more likely that that person is in confession for the right reasons. But yeah, I think it's just so important that the girl you are looking for has a relationship with God, and she doesn't just go to him when she's having a minor inconvenience or she wants something, because God's not a genie, and we should know that by now, hopefully, as adults. But at the same time, if she doesn't have a strong relationship with God and she only goes to him when she's down, that's a very transactional relationship. That's not a relationship that's very deep. You really want a woman who's nurturing her relationship with Christ through scripture, through the sacraments, through prayer and sacrifice. And sacrifice ties into suffering quite a bit, and too many Catholics overlook the power of sacrificing things, giving up that extra donut, giving up that 5th cup of coffee. Why is it always 5 cups of coffee? Literally outing myself right here, guys. I swear I don't drink 5 cups of coffee. Shh, don't tell them. Ambrose doesn't really talk anyways. He's a stuffed animal. So anyways, does she put everybody else above God? Does she put everything else above God? Or does she put God first in every aspect of her life? This is hard. Okay, I'm not saying she has to be perfect at this, but striving for it and desiring it is important. And the other thing that I will say is there are a lot of women who will act like Catholics in church, but as soon as they leave the building, it's like they're no longer Catholic. And we call that nominal Catholics for the most part, but it's something that I have noticed, especially in my generation. And I'm not judging like their intentions or anything. I'm just judging the actions that I see. And what I see is these beautiful women going to mass, and then the next day I see them on their story getting drunk, partying, cursing, wearing immodest clothing, etc. And so it's important to know whether or not she is authentically Catholic and not just Catholic when she enters a church. So basically, if her spiritual life is really shallow, don't expect a deep ocean of faith in your relationship. And this ties into our third point, which is her morals, because prayer and action is reflective of her morals. She shouldn't be sitting on the fence, as Jordan Peterson says. There is a massive difference between someone who is culturally Catholic and someone who is faithfully, obediently Catholic. Unfortunately, a lot of women will cherry pick the church's teachings and the dogmas that they believe, and we have over, I believe it's 300 dogmas, And in order to consider yourself to be Catholic, you do actually have to believe in all of them. They're not optional, but that's a video for a different time. You need to be looking for a woman whose moral convictions are rooted in truth and not personal feelings or progressive ideologies, recent trends, what her friends think. Oh my goodness. The amount of women I know, well, I actually don't know them, but the amount of women who I have known in my past who just changed whatever their viewpoint was based off what their friends believed, absolutely insane. But that was high school for you. They were young. Like, it happens, whatever, but it happens, you know? But you want her to have her morals based in truth, because that never changes. The Catholic Church never changes, okay? When it comes to dogmas and truths, it doesn't change those things. But the world is constantly changing what truth means to the world. You know, relativism just runs rampant these days. Your truth is your truth. My truth is my truth. I can believe whatever I want as long as I'm not hurting anyone. Define hurting somebody. But there are a lot of women out there who read the catechism and they're just like, oh, that's just a suggestion. Like, that's not actually what we need to believe. If you date a girl like this, you're just gonna have problems, okay? And when those problems come up, they're not gonna be small, because Satan loves to get cracks into the foundation of a marriage. And the biggest battle is going to be between Satan and the family. So you want someone who's going to be rooted in Catholic teaching, understand it, and follow it. And now a word from our sponsor, House of Joppa. All right, you guys, you know that we just moved into a brand new apartment, and with that apartment means decorating. Now, I'm someone who is very picky about the types of pieces that we have in our apartment, and it's really hard to find places that have the kind of pieces that I like. But thanks to House of Joppa, I'm able to find all of those pieces in one place, and I don't have to worry about the quality, because the quality is always amazing. So maybe you're looking for a rosary, maybe you're looking for a tumbler, maybe you're looking for a Marian statue, or even some jewelry. House of Joppa is going to be your one-stop shop for all of that stuff. So maybe somebody's birthday is coming up, maybe a holiday is coming up, or maybe you just want to treat yourself to something from House of Joppa. You can do so. Go to houseofjoppa.com. That's House of JOPPA.com, and find something for yourself or a loved one today. You will not be disappointed in their selection, and you're not going to be disappointed in their quality. I have a standing crucifix, a Sacred Heart necklace, a book, and a standing Marian statue from House of Joppa. They are all phenomenal, and I highly suggest you guys go check them out and find something you'll love. All right, back to the video. Okay, and no, men, you do not need to find a girl who can quote Augustine or who has a theology degree. She doesn't need to have those things. Though if she does, that is pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. What matters more is that she knows what the church teaches on the big things, and that she believes it with her whole heart. I'm talking about the tough, unpopular stuff like abortion, contraception, cohabitation, gender roles, raising kids, Catholicism, the sanctity of marriage, even modesty and the value of suffering, like I mentioned earlier in this video. If she's like meh or dismissive on some of these things, that's gonna be a problem. Now, that doesn't mean she needs to be perfect or she has all the answers. Sometimes what's actually really great is if even she doesn't agree with all these things necessarily, she is open to learning and she is open to the truth, because that can also be very beneficial. But if she's just completely closed off, she doesn't want to know about it, she gets aggressive, she gets standoffish and all that stuff, it's like not worth it. But she should care enough to wrestle with the hard teachings and conform her life to the truth, not the other way around. I've seen too many guys fall for the girl who just seems so perfect on the surface. She's beautiful, she's devout, she goes to mass, and then they don't have these hard conversations with her. They don't ask the real questions. They avoid the deeper stuff because it just might be awkward, or they assume they'll figure it out later. You're not gonna figure it out later. And then fast forward a few years and you're married to someone who thinks the church is sexist, they believe contraception is a personal choice, and then suddenly they don't want to baptize the kids. And now you're having arguments that you never anticipated because you didn't stop to ask where her moral compass really pointed. If she doesn't believe the church is right about human dignity, sexuality, the sanctity of life, and the purpose of family, then you're not on the same page. Period. Marriage is a vocation. You guys need to be on the same page with everything. Over communicate, express your expectations, etc. Like, you need to over communicate. Don't fool yourself into feeling like being in love is enough, because feelings are fleeting, and you're going to have to choose your wife every single day and choose to love her in marriage, even when you don't feel like it. So make sure you guys are on the same page with the big things so you avoid all of those arguments and all of those unnecessary stresses. Marriage is already stressful. You don't need to deal with any extra stuff. So ask the hard questions. Does she stand firm when it's unpopular or even when she stands alone? Does she care more about being holy than being liked? Is she forming her conscience according to church teaching or according to Instagram reels and pop psychology? Your future wife should be someone who helps you get to heaven, not someone who confuses you and makes the path to heaven paved with jagged rocks. So yeah, if her moral compass is stuck on maybe, then maybe it's time for you to move on. Number 4, she knows who the boss is. Okay, that was kind of an inflammatory title, I'll be honest. But what I mean by that is that she knows what real submission looks like. I think a lot of women have an issue with authority, sadly, and it's usually because of the feminist movement, and it's kind of snuck poison into their minds. But also keep in mind, you need to be a man worthy of respect and worthy of submission, so don't just expect it to be one-sided. You also have to put in the work. In other words, submission doesn't mean ordering her around, never taking her opinions into account, or brushing off her feelings, but it does mean that she understands that you're doing what you feel is best for the betterment of the entire family, not just for yourself, but for her and for any future kids or any kids you do have. You do not want a woman who is super controlling and domineering. Having a type A personality in a woman is not necessarily a bad thing, but some women can take it a little too far. I'm a type A personality, but I know my limits and I know my place. That probably triggered some people, but it's true. I know my purpose. I know my place. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I find that to be so freeing and empowered through that. Also, the fact I don't have to make any giant decisions, like, you know? But unfortunately, a lot of men do get stuck in relationships with women who emasculate them and bully them and belittle them. Instant red flag, okay? Just automatically red flag. Does not fly. A great example of submission that I like to use is Fräulein Maria from Sound of Music. There is a scene in the movie where the captain's brother wants the children to perform in the talent show, and the children want to, but the captain won't allow it for obvious reasons that I can't say out loud on YouTube. But Maria, being their adopted mother, was like, oh, I'm gonna try anyways, and so she intervenes with her thoughts. And he listens, but he says no, and that is final, and she accepts his decision with submissiveness and meekness, knowing that he is doing what he believes is best for the family. So that is just a great example of submission and letting the man lead. But men, again, you need to have confidence and respect so she naturally feels like she can let you lead. Sometimes women become the boss because the husband simply doesn't want to. He doesn't want to take charge, do hard things, or make her feel safe, so he puts it on her to make big decisions, to define the relationship, and to take control of the household. So just be sure that you're learning good leadership skills and you're learning good supportive skills. Okay, the next topic we're going to discuss is a little hot button topic for the ladies, but it needs to be said. There are a lot of women out there who have shopping addictions. Shocker, I know. It used to be a whole meme back in the early 2010s, but surprise, surprise, we still have a problem. All they do is spend when they get a little moolah in the bank, and they rack up debt like crazy. And actually, this can go unnoticed in a relationship until boom, you're married and you share a bank account, or she might even try to hide it from you. And then before you know it, you are also in $80,000 in debt. And you definitely don't want a wife who's going to run you and your kids financially into the ground because she doesn't have good financial skills. I'm not saying that she needs to never spend money. That's a part of being a woman. Is we go out, we make a house a home, we make food a meal type of thing. But she should know the budget. She shouldn't go over the budget, and she shouldn't overspend on luxuries or things that she wants that you guys don't need or cannot afford. Unfortunately, these days, I think most adults have debt, whether that's credit card debt, student loans, or they owe something on their car. So dating somebody without any debt is probably going to be a difficult thing. But if she's really working on paying that off, that's the first thing she puts her money towards, and she's really made progress with it, that's good. That means she, even though has debt, she is really working on paying it off, and she will eventually. That means she has good financial skills. She has good money skills. But if she has a lot of debt, and You probably won't find this out for a couple weeks if you ask her about it, etc. Money habits, whatever. Dating's kind of weird like that. People don't want to talk about money. It's whatever. But you should know, and you should ask at some point in the relationship if it's getting serious, if she has been racking up debt and she still goes shopping, she still goes out with her friends, she still does expensive dinners and things like that, and she isn't paying off her debt, she just doesn't really care about it, just keeps racking it up. Red flag. You know, when I lived at home as a teenager during high school, I worked a part-time job and I made actually a lot of money working part-time, because most of the time I was actually working full-time, because even though I was employed as a part-time, they made me stay later. Anyways, I saved up quite a bit of money. And so I felt like I could spend it on things, and I spent it on some frivolous things. Looking back, I was a teenager. That makes sense. But most of that stuff is probably now in a landfill somewhere, because I only bought it to get a dopamine hit. And once that wore off, it went off to Goodwill and whatever. I'm just so glad that I grew out of that dopamine hit of buy, throw away, consumerism mindset. And I mean, it wasn't easy to break out of that mindset. I had to budget really hard. I had to make sure I was constantly asking myself, is this a need or a want? But eventually it broke my habit, and now I have a really great financial grasp on things, and I understand how money works a lot better, and I understand credit cards and all of that stuff, and I had to teach myself that because nobody taught me that. And I think a lot of kids are in the same boat today. Nobody's teaching them these life skills. And something else I had to do was unfollow these TikTok and Instagram bulk accounts, or like Amazon accounts that show you like all these things you can get on Amazon and they're on sale and commission and blah, 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 blah. I had to unfollow those accounts because for me personally, that was a temptation to go and buy whatever that person was selling on their TikTok or on their Instagram. And I was like, I can't be doing this. I have plenty of clothes. I'm good. So that was just a little bit too much of a temptation for me. So I unfollowed some people from Instagram and TikTok, and yeah, it worked wonders. Okay guys, these last two tips are for my patrons. If you would like to become a part of my behind the scenes community and help support this ministry, head over to my Patreon. I've linked it below in the description. You'll get full versions of videos, including this one, that are ad-free and censor-free. Depending on which tier you sign up for, you'll also get Zoom meetings, live Q&As, and plenty more. So definitely head over there and check it out. And if you would like to support this ministry with a one-time donation, you can do so on my website at thereligioushippie.com. Thank you so much. You guys are the reason I'm able to continue this ministry, so thank you. But yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this topic below. I know that there are a lot of different things going on, but let me know what qualities you look for in a Catholic woman when you're dating. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Bye! This video was possible due to my patrons over on Patreon. I would specifically like to thank Jude Crew Plus, and I would personally like to thank Rube's Good Brain Coffee, Darren, Jay Usadi, Dan Nuns, Sabrina, James Bell, Father Carr, George Gregory, Winona Dubrova, Oliver Waite, Andrew Plowski, Alex R., James, Veronica Beck, Geraldi Guzman, Cody, Kevin Ashbrook, Michael, Paul Donovan, Christopher Woodside, Michael Martin, DJ Hawk, and Jason. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Bye!